There is a place that is spoken about only in whispers, a dark area that spawns the beginnings of urban legends, a place where anything can happen and usually does. During the light of day it hides just outside of view, but when the sun goes down, spirits, creatures of the night roam free, and things do go bump in the night. It is in every state and every country, and there is no escaping it, no matter how safe you feel behind your locked doors and latched windows. So we invite you to turn down the lights and turn up your radio while we join Dave Schrader and Tim Dennis, your hosts, on a journey into the darkness on the edge of town.
Hello and welcome. It's Wednesday and you're tuned into the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Beyond the Darkness. I'm your host, Dave Schrader. Great week lined up, interesting guests, great topics, and I want to thank all the new sponsors that we're bringing on board. A lot of great things going on here, and we want to thank all of you, the listeners, who've really been pouring out emails and ideas on guests, suggestions. Remember, if you send me a suggestion, it helps not just to give me a topic like, yeah, I'd like you to talk about this. Give me an idea of who you think we should talk to about that. Who have you heard? What have you read? What would you like us to talk about more in depth? And if you have links to those authors, researchers, investigators, maybe somebody off the grid that nobody's ever heard of, we love those kind of guests. You can always reach me by emailing me at dave@darknessradio.com. That's dave@darknessradio.com. And you give us any kind of information regarding our true crime guests or the guests that you hear here on Beyond the Darkness. And if you missed yesterday's true crime, you are nuts. You've got to sign up now. I don't know what you've been waiting for. It can't get any better than this. Douglas Preston is back. You heard us talk about the Monkey God episode we did with him a while ago. He has a very compelling true crime story that we shared on the show yesterday. And it is a story, The Monster of Florence, where not only does he investigate one of the most vicious and brutal serial killers, but he and his co-author and researcher and a journalist in Italy actually get implicated in the crimes at one point during the story. This is something that is just waiting to be made into a Hollywood movie. We even talk about that. There's a possibility George Clooney may be attached to this project, and you may see it. But this story is unlike anything else we've covered on True Crime Tuesday. Go check it out for yourself. You want to know how? It's very simple. Go to darknessradio.com. You'll find the True Crime Tuesday banner right there on the front page. Click on it. It'll take you to the Patreon site. Subscribe now. I know you're used to getting Beyond the Darkness for free. You still get Beyond the Darkness for free 5 days a week. We're going to keep providing this show for free. And you say you want more. Well, we're giving you more. If you go, you can find on darknessradio.com our Darkhives, where you can link in and you'll find usually 3 episodes a week from our archives. We go way back into 2006, 2007, and we're going to be digging out some of our favorite episodes narrated by Tim. He'll introduce them and let you hear some of the lost episodes of Darkness Radio and Beyond the Darkness. So you get those for free. All we ask for the True Crime Tuesday, it was a way to bring it out and make it available to you. So many of you wanted us to continue in the true crime vein, and they didn't have a spot for us on Podcast 1, but they supported us in making the leap to Patreon. We ask $5 a month. That's all. That's $1.25 an episode. That's all you ever have to pay. $5 a month, literally cheaper than most drinks at a Starbucks, Caribou, or one crappy Happy Meal you can leave out of your diet. You'll be saving your life, and you'll be getting some of the best in true crime talk radio. Try it out for yourself. You can go and click on the link, and you'll be able to listen to snippets from a bunch of the episodes that we've run already. It's going to give you access to all of the past episodes so you never miss a minute. And you don't have to just listen on Tuesdays. It's available once you subscribe any day you want to go back in and listen. So if you're unavailable on Tuesdays, check it out on Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, or maybe you're going to download a whole bunch of them and listen to them on a long drive during the weekend. Make it part of your day. Plus, not only do you get the great true crime stories. You get a lot of fun with Tim and I as we investigate dumb crimes and stupid criminals. It's 90 minutes to 120 minutes every week delivered to you, and it's never been easier. And with that small $5 fee, that helps keep it ad-free. You never have to stop and listen to one advertisement, kind of like you're listening to now. You'll never hear that. It's all free of advertising. And that money that we raise through Patreon with our One True Crime program that gives you 4 new episodes every month, that helps to subsidize and keep this, the rest of our shows like Beyond the Darkness free and give you the access to the older archives on the Darchives page on our site. So please, all I ask is if you enjoy the shows, you want to help us, you want to support us, as many of you have offered in the past, this is the way to do it. $5 a month and you get all of the Darkness Radio, Beyond the Darkness, and True Crime Tuesday podcasts available to you. So please go check that out right now. darknessradio.com. Click on that True Crime banner and subscribe now. Our goal to hit before the end of the month is 2,500 subscribers. We've already crested over 1,000 subscribers, thanks to you guys. Let's keep the ball rolling. Get us up to 2,500, and we're going to be able to maybe start offering up other special little benefits for true crime listeners. So please go check that out. Do it right now at darknessradio.com. All right, tonight we're here with the best in paranormal talk radio. Let's get started. It's been a couple of years since he's been with us. Timothy Beckley is back. His new book, The Matrix Control System of Philip K. Dick and the Paranormal Synchronicities of Timothy Green Beckley. That's the new book. Thank you so much for joining us, Tim. It's been a while.
Well, Dave, it's always good to hook up with you. I sat here and I listened to your program as frequently as I possibly can. And actually, it was one of the first podcasts I think I ever listened to. You ran a half-page ad in Fate magazine. And I said, wow, man, this sounds super cool. And I tuned in, and I've been a listener since then.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Timothy. That's a nice little mention. And go check out fatemag.com for yourself, folks. This is the Reader's Digest of Fortean information. If there's ever anything you want to read, they've got it. I think it's a quarterly magazine. It's about the size of a Reader's Digest, and you can subscribe for digital or hard copies at fatemag.com. That's just a free little ad because we love
that was the first magazine that I actually sold an article to. I think I was 15 years old. And I put typewriter we used in those days, Smith Corona with the old carbon ribbon,
right?
And did them up an article, and they sent me a payment for it, and I've been on and off a regular contributor since then. So
that's fantastic.
Always happy to give a plug in for Phyllis and her mighty crew there at Fate.
All right, let's introduce, for people that don't know you and maybe didn't hear you on our Darkness Radio show. Talk to us a little bit, Timothy. Who are you, and why do you have an interest in this type of topic?
Okay. Well, I have been wandering around the paranormal since I was a youth. I mean, really, really young. I lived in a house that had poltergeist manifestations in it. Lights going on and off and doors opening and closing. And I remember one time a piece of chinaware slid across the table, and I won't say floated, but it fell to the floor without breaking. But even before then, it was sort of the subject matter was sort of inbred into the family. My grandfather on my father's side of the family had seen a headless horseman behind the barn in Shelbyville, Kentucky. Now, there was some well, he never liked to talk about it. He was a staunch Baptist, and most Baptists believe that if such things are real, that they have to be demonic. So he didn't like to speak of it. But I think on the one or two occasions that he did talk to my father, there was some conjecture that it might have been a Confederate soldier whose head had been blown off by a cannon fire. And then at the age of 3, I had an experience with some unseen hand, I guess you want to call it that saved my life. We were on our way down to Kentucky. The drive took about 3.5 days from New Jersey. Now, my mother had asthma very bad at the time. And for some reason, which I don't quite understand, Kentucky was one of the places where you could go that was kind of allergy free. There's no place in the world like that anymore.
Right.
Dave, but in those days it was. So we would get in the Oldsmobile and drive down and stop along the way. My parents would set me up with a blanket and some toys in the back seat. Well, as I understand it, it was getting to be rather late, and on the third night, and my father wanted to press through to get to the destination. But my mother said, no, it's getting overcast, it's getting foggy out, and she put her foot down. He was doing the driving, but she was in the front seat, of course, and she demanded that he stop immediately. So he stopped the car, and I guess we took a nap in the car or fell asleep in the car. And when we woke in the morning, the sun was cutting through the fog, and it turned out that we were on the edge of a cliff. And if we had gone another foot or so, the wheels would have gone over the cliff, and I would not be here today to chat you up on Beyond the Darkness. So that was another, experience. We had poltergeist phenomena. I did some astral.
Let me ask you real quickly about that,
mm-hmm.
Tim. When you talk about the poltergeist phenomena,
yes,
was it during a specific time in your life, or was it on and off throughout your life living there?
As far as I can recall, my mother fooled around with the Ouija board from time to time. Okay, we could blame it on that. But like I say, I was so involved in it, like I was reading Fate magazine by the time I was 10 years old. So, and I had one of the first metaphysical schools in the country, and I started putting out a newsletter on UFOs when I was 14. Now, I think most of the poltergeist phenomena was around maybe when I was 7 or 8 years old. My godmother, who didn't believe in any of this, had an experience one time where she had come to a visit. Now, my grandparents lived upstairs, and we lived downstairs. There was a connecting little hallway, Okay, so my godmother was, I guess, babysitting me, and she heard the sound of a baby crying. And she opened the door, and there was a woman with a baby in her hand, but she got frightened because she knew that there was nobody supposed to be in the house. My grandparents would have been asleep upstairs. Now, we found out later on that apparently during the big epidemic, I guess this would have been diphtheria, right after World War I, that killed about, 48 or 50 million people, worldwide, that the woman had passed away and her child at about the same time, and they had a wake in the house and had the baby in the coffin along with her, which by today's standards would seem a little grisly,
right,
perhaps, but not going back to 14 or 13 or something along that line. Also, too, I remember one time my mother and I heard the sound of a baby crying, and we followed the footsteps of what looked like booty prints out to the back gate during there was snow on the ground, so you could see where the footprints led to, and then it just vanished at the gate there. So, and then, like I say, I had this experience of 3 UFO sightings, and first at the age of 10. So I was kind of accustomed to realizing that the universe and the world was not exactly as we saw fit to believe, that there was something utterly strange about reality that was not being taught to us in school, certainly, and it was not being taught to us in the church or anything like that, And this is what Philip K. Dick, who, of course, is one of the best-known science fiction writers of our time. He did many, many books, and of course, some of them were made into major motion pictures,
right,
like Total Recall. And
I want to get into him in a minute. Let's do that. I just want to kind of round out your story, though.
Yes. Okay.
One thing that I'm fascinated by, somebody that's lived through this much activity, and especially poltergeist activity, that prominent. Did you ever notice, did it flare up, Tim, at any specific times? Was it maybe when there was more angst in the house, or anger, frustration, anything like that?
Well, Dave, this is so long ago.
Right.
I'm turning 70 next month. I don't remember. I mean, I would be sitting here with my fingers crossed behind my back if I told you that I had any recollection beyond pretty much what I've already stated on this.
All right, fair enough. I was just curious, as like I said, not many people we get to talk to live through that, and wondered if there was any kind of aspect of it that you might recall.
Well, I was somewhat of a sickly child. I did have asthma. I had a touch of polio. I don't see any connection between the two of them. And now, I'm kind of follow the Paul Eno belief system, is that these are not really spirits of the dead or demonic entities, that we're living in this ever-changing multi-universe.
Well, Paul and Ben will be with us tomorrow on the show, so that was a great lead-in.
Synchronicity.
Nice way to play that out. All right, Philip K. Dick, you mentioned this name, and I know we've spoken about this before. Introduce our audience to the genius of Philip K. Dick, please. All
right. Well, he was a science fiction writer. He started his writing career, I would think, in the early 1950s. In those days, there were what were referred to as the pulps. The pulps being little digest-sized magazines printed on very cheap paper. And writers wrote for a penny or 2 cents a word, which is probably more than they would make today, to be honest with you. And he wrote about, outer space and futuristic worlds and things like that. But due to a series of events that happened to him in real life, and I use that in quotes in his case, he started writing about a multi-universe and other dimensions and other realities. In fact, back in 1977, long before I guess computers are really in general use, he appeared at a science fiction convention in France, and he totally I guess what's the word that I'm looking for? I was going to say made a fool out of himself. Science fiction writers, as a rule, are not your great thinkers that you might think that they are. They're very, very concerned about their own concept of science. They're more into, they do not like the paranormal. They hate UFOs. They're always looking for an explanation, mainly because the hierarchy of the science fictiondom, like Arthur C. Clarke and Isaac Asimov and Ray Bradbury, were dead set against the subject. It's kind of like magicians are today as far as feats of the paranormal go. But Philip K. Dick was a little different than this type of science fiction writer. So in 1977, they had a press conference at this organization that he was speaking for. And he said, and this is a very short quote, "People claim to remember past lives. I claim to remember a different, very different present life. I know of nobody who has ever made this claim before, but I rather suspect that my experiences are not that unique. What perhaps is unique is my willingness to talk about it. We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed, and our reality is altered. And because of this, I believe that we have been reprogrammed many times." And so he lectured on this, and members of the audience looked at him as if he was mad. And I don't know if it hurt his career any, but they sure in the heck made some very unfriendly comments about his interests and beliefs. Now, I guess most of the listeners have seen one or more of the Matrix movies. Now, right. There's a general belief that the Matrix movies are based upon Philip K. Dick's reality.
Okay.
I guess,
his assertions of what was really going on.
What was really going on.
Right.
And he spent the rest of his career writing about other realities. In fact, he believed that the reality was not static, that it was due to change, and that sometimes we might even remember an event that didn't take place on this reality but might have taken place in some other reality at some other time, or perhaps even the present time. Everything is kind of interlocked the way that he saw it. Now he did have.
Let me ask you about that.
Yes.
Let's roll back. You made a really interesting comment in talking about his quote.
Yes.
Right. I claim to remember a very different present life. Did he ever expound about that? What did he mean?
Well, he wrote about some of these things, of course, in his various books. Now, he did a book that's actually now been made into a series on Amazon.com. It's called The Man in the High Castle.
Right.
Okay, and that's his vision or his reality, as if the
Nazis
Allied,
won the war, right?
The Nazis won the war. Yeah, the Allied powers were not victorious, and so he believed that in some other time frame or some other reality frame, time could be altered and history could be changed, that it is not stagnant. And he had a strange experience that took place in, I think it was 1974. He had been to the dentist and he had an impacted tooth. And he had sent out to the pharmacy to get some, something for the toothache. And he answered the door, and there was a woman there, standing there. And she had on some sort of pendant, which he recognized as a symbol. It's the symbol of Christianity was used around that time with the fish, the eye of the fish in it. And so he had, after that, he started having flashbacks of him being around at the time of Jesus. And it turned out, now you would never suspect him of being a very religious person, but because of some of these experiences he had, he did start to get very deeply into Gnosticism. And he incorporated some of this in some of his in some of the works that he did, and of course, he's best known, like I say, for Blade Runner and Total Recall, which is one of my favorite movies. There are many, I don't know how many books he wrote. I mean, he wrote several dozen books, and of course now there's a new Blade Runner coming out, which he couldn't have written, of course, but it's based on the characters in the original Blade Runner. Right. That'll be out, I think, in this October. So he was I guess you could call him a very visionary individual, despite the fact that he was ostracized by many members of the science fiction community as being somewhat strange, peculiar, and odd. Now, I can't say that it's totally because of him that I got into synchronicities, but one thing that I did find out is that quite a number of people who are involved in UFO research and the paranormal have had what I would think are a larger degree of conspiracy, a larger number of conspiracies, synchronicities and coincidences than most people, have. Maybe it's because they take note of them, or maybe they're aware of the phenomena. Well, take for example Charles Fort, of course, who was the granddaddy of the strange and unusual and unknown. He believed that we were like chess pieces on a chessboard, and that there is some controlling force in the universe that's, I guess, responsible to some degree for our destiny. And I've had so many of these synchronicities now. I would think in the book I detail about maybe 60 or 70 of them. And we're not talking about looking up at the clock and seeing 11:11, or thinking of somebody on the telephone and they call 2 days later, or you run into them on the street.
No, we're talking about bringing up Charles Fort when it turns out tomorrow we're talking to Jim Steinmeier, who's written a book called Charles Fort, The Man Who Investigated the Supernatural, and you had no clue we were going to do that. See?
No idea. There's two in a row. Paul and Benny, Well, but some of this stuff gets really, really eerie. Let me give you the most recent episode, the one that I took notes on. It's in the book. One of our authors, we have about 259 books published that are on Amazon.com. Not that I've all written myself, mind you, but we publish books by Brad Steiger and T. Lomson-Grompa and Commander X and a whole bevy of paranormal writers. And some of them have different viewpoints, than I do. People say, "Oh, do you believe in every book that you publish?" Well, of course not. I mean, I'm a publisher, and I think a successful one because I've been doing this since 1965. So I do bring the people what I believe that they want to read. Okay, well, one of our authors is a psychic by the name of Maria DeAndrea. Now, I worked with Maria a couple of decades ago when I was running the New York School of Occult Arts and Sciences. It was one of the first metaphysical schools in the country, organized in the mid-1960s. She gave lectures, she taught classes, gave seminars, and did some, psychic fairs. I had her under contract at the time, and we did some dealings with some very large mail order companies where they were using her likeness and pitch and like the Inquirer and some of these tabloids, and it resulted in a bit of financial gain for the two of us. I was acting as her agent, but then she got married, and her husband wanted a full accounting, and he wanted to take over the management of her career and so forth and so on. So I never stopped liking Maria. I just didn't have the opportunity to deal with her anymore. About 2 years ago, I'm on the telephone talking to Peter Moon, who has published all these Montauk, books about Montauk and the secret societies and the German Nazi UFO syndrome and so forth. And he tells me, he says, "Oh, I just spoke to somebody, and they'd like for you to call them and to say hello." And I said, "Well, who are they? We don't have that many mutual friends." And he said, "Well, Maria DeAndrea." And I said, "Well, Maria DeAndrea, I have a newspaper clipping here that was published in the New York Post, and it said that a Maria DeAndrea who lived in Huntington, Long Island, was killed one day while trying to cross the highway late at night to get to a convenience store." Well, now, the real Maria DeAndrea, who is still alive, I'm very pleased to say, lived in Huntington. And how many Maria DeAndreas are there, for one thing, and certainly how many live in Long Island? I mean, it's not the most familiar name in the world. I certainly don't know any other Maria DeAndrea. So we got together, and I started. I bought out a couple of her old books and started publishing some of her new books. She just did a book recently on the jinn, and another book on the supernatural words. And so every once in a while we get together and we take the bus from the Port Authority in Manhattan down to Atlantic City. Now, Dave, neither one of us gamble. Sometimes we don't even use the coupon that they give you. Like you get a $25 coupon when you get off the bus. But we go, where else can you get a room for $79 where you get a little peace and quiet? You're on the boardwalk. There's plenty to eat, and the IMAX theater is right next door. So we take the bus down. It's about a 3.5 hour trip. We do it maybe once every 3 or 4 months. Anyway, one day, this is about maybe 2 months ago, we take the bus down, and when you get off the turnpike, the bus goes through the center of town and then crawls through some of the side streets. On one of the side streets that's about 2 blocks away from the casino, there is a bed and breakfast, and on the roof of the bed and breakfast are 2 statues of the Blues Brothers, John Belushi, and of course our friend Dan Aykroyd, who's very much into these type of subjects. Right. And we pass it all the time. But I happen to mention to Maria, I said, Dan his father has even written a book on seances and on ghosts and all, because they used to have circle meetings at their house up in Canada where Dan was raised. Okay, so we chat about this for a few minutes, and then eventually the bus pulls into the unloading dock there at the casino, and we get off, and the greeter meets you and gives you your coupon, and you have to go up to the the cage, the window in the lobby, and they put it on your membership card, and you can spend it in the casino at the slot machines. So as we approach the cage to turn in our coupon, the loudspeaker in the room where we are, the entranceway, starts playing a song. Well, what do they start playing but the theme to Ghostbusters? Now, how in God's name is that possible? Nobody could have overheard our conversation in the bus. Not only that, but it's not like there's a disc jockey in the room. The music is like, you were here on an elevator or something. I don't know if it's programmed by Pandora or something, but it's done many miles away from the casino. Here we are going up to the cage, and they're playing the theme to the Ghostbusters. So, I said to Maria, I said, well, this certainly is a synchronicity if there ever was one. But let's take it one step further and see if there aren't any Ghostbusters slot machines in the casino where we are, and if we play them with the $25 that we've gotten for free, maybe we'll win the jackpot. Okay. Sounds like a good synchronicity, right?
Why not? Sure. I mean, okay. I've done stupider things on thinner thread, so why not?
Yeah. Okay. But I've had these 60 or 70 synchronicities all my life. They never pan out to anything. I mean, you get a good chuckle out of some of them. Some of them are a little bit more serious than others. But here's an opportunity for them to throw a little coin our way, right? So it turns out that there were a couple of slot machines, Ghostbusters slot machines in the casino. Unfortunately, they had carted them away 2 months before our arrival there. And even if they hadn't, Dave, they were penny slot machines.
Gotcha.
So you can imagine our
disappointment there, huh?
Yeah, but you could imagine that even if we had won anything, what would we have won? $59 or something like that. I mean, what are you going to make on a penny slot machine? So again, there's kind of this trickster element that's involved in all of this, wacky synchronicity events. But to me, there is a controlling force behind this. Now, who the controlling force is or what the controlling force is open to speculation and wonderment. There are a couple of people who have conjectured on this. Now, even Jacques Vallée had a synchronicity that he wrote up in his book. He was doing some research on the order of Melchizedek. I don't even know anything really about the order. And he was, a secret group or society or something like that. And he had just arrived, I think in France or some other country there in Europe on a tour, and he got into the cab, and on the way out he noticed the driver always has their photo and identifying a name, that the guy's last name was Melchizedek. So he gets a receipt, and later on he looks at it and he says, well, let me check on this. And it turns out the person was in the phone book, but it was the only person listed. Again, this was something that he was doing research on, and it turned up in a synchronicity that has no plausible explanation to it. There's another fellow, the late Dr. John C. Lilly. Mm-hmm. Now, Dr. John C. Lilly was the first individual to communicate with dolphins. He wrote a book, which I read many, many years ago, called Eye of the Cyclone. And he had any number of synchronicities as well, but he attributed them to an actual organization, some super, spectrum organization that is unseen, by us down here on Earth. He called them ECCO, ECCO, which was short for, I can't remember offhand, but he believed that all these synchronicities in his life were actually being controlled by some outside entities or some outside force. And like I say, I do believe that there is something to that. I think that these things are beyond our control. Now, the question is there, if we really are a part of this computer simulation, is there a possibility that somebody is up there, and I say up there or outside the matrix or the fishbowl, I like to call it, actually controlling our destiny or making these things happen? Or is it random? Perhaps this giant computer was everything was programmed in it thousands of years ago, and maybe whoever programmed the computer comes back every once in a while to take a look to make sure that it's still running, or maybe they don't come back at all, and it's all very random. So, I mean, there's all kinds of theories that one could put forward to explain these things, but the synchronicities are just like come too fast, at least in my life, to explain them just as coincidence.
Understandable. Fascinating stuff. We need to take a break. We'll come back. We'll continue to examine the world of Philip K. Dick, or the alternate matrix worlds, and we'll talk about more strange synchronicities. Tim Beckley is our guest. You're listening to the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Beyond the Darkness.
Beyond the Darkness.
Welcome back. This is Beyond the Darkness, your home for the best in paranormal talk radio 5 days a week. And we've got some fun stuff to talk about. And listen, on the show, we talk about some of the darkest mysteries that surround our universe, some of the most mind-bending possibilities. And one question that I get over and over and over again is, Darkness Dave, what kind of underwear do you wear? Oh, I know it sounds funny, but people want to know. And if you want to know the answer, MeUndies are simply the softest and most comfortable underwear you'll ever wear. Once you try them, you won't ever want to wear anything else. Unless, of course, you're naked or in your swimsuit. For every other second of your life, though, there's MeUndies, just like it sounds, MEUNDIES. And I don't know about you, Tim Beckley, but I'm a man. I like to feel comfortable when I'm out and about, whether I'm wearing long pants or short pants. I want to know that I'm being cradled in comfort. How about you?
Oh, I'm right there with you, so to speak. Yeah, so to speak.
Every pair of MeUndies is substantially sourced and made from micromodal, a fabric that's 3 times softer than cotton. So if you're used to buying packs of uncomfortable, boring underwear that only come in white, gray, black, or tan, MeUndies is going to change your paradigm, because MeUndies comes in all kinds of colors and patterns, and they release a new limited edition pattern each month that they almost always sell out. And this month is a rainbow confetti print called Celebrate. Try MeUndies today. Trust me on this. I know comfort. Go get the Celebrate pattern before they're all gone. They have men and women at MeUndies.com. So go check it out, MeUndies.com/darkness, where you'll save 20% off your first pair. You have to feel for yourself to see why MeUndies has sold over 5 million pairs to date. And if you don't love your first pair of MeUndies, they're free. Yes, they're free. That's how confident they are with their product. So get 20% off your first pair, plus free shipping. That's MeUndies.com/darkness. Do it right now. That's MeUndies, MEUNDIES.com/darkness. MeUndies.com/darkness. Save 20% off that purchase right now. And let's talk about TrueCar, because I'm getting more and more responses from you all around the United States. They're trying this. They're loving it. This is the way you got to go. And if you're talking about breaking out of the matrix, Tim, and people are always looking for ways to find the best way to handle a situation, how do you go out and purchase a car, especially in this competitive environment where everybody seems to have some skin in the game, and they're maybe overcharging, they're screwing you around on special incentives? You'd like to save $3,000 when you make your next purchase, wouldn't you, Tim?
Oh, at least, absolutely.
Well, that's what TrueCar does, and that's how they make it easy. The average savings on cars through TrueCar is $3,000 off the manufacturer's suggested retail. I want you to just let that kind of marinate in your mind for a minute there, Tim. $3,000 is the average savings using TrueCar. Why wouldn't you use TrueCar when you know that they're in your back seat. They're there to help you out through every move of purchasing a car. It's just that simple. Go to TrueCar, check it out for yourself. There's over 16,000 certified dealers. That means there's one somewhere very close to you. They're going to take all the legwork out of this for you. They're going to make it as fast and possible and easy and effective as they possibly can. When you go in, you're going to find out, Tim, what it's like to purchase a car and what that car is being paid for by neighbors and friends and relatives in the area around you. So you know what? You wind up finding out exactly what this car is worth, and you don't overpay ever. Isn't that a relief off your mind?
Boy, you bet.
Right. And when you're looking for synchronicities, where else can you get a better synchronicity than seeking the information, finding the information, and getting exactly what you were seeking? That's the trigger here. You know you're thinking about getting a car, or you know somebody that is. And next time they hear that, you can say, hey, my buddy at Beyond the Darkness, he's the guy. He knows the answer. He's using it for his own purchase. Why not give it a try? Go try out TrueCar. Go to TrueCar.com. Check it out for yourself. Know exactly what you're going to get before you even step one foot on the lot. Make sure that you know the prices, and you get all the incentives up front. You'll know exactly what you're going to pay for this vehicle and what everybody else in the general area is paying for the same vehicle. It's that simple. So when you're in the mood to buy a brand new or previously owned car, and they have over 70,000. Oh, I'm sorry. Is that could I be wrong on this? It's more than 70,000? Yes, 700,000 pre-owned vehicles. 700,000. That means there's something for every one of you listening right now. Go check it out. You're going to find the car of your dreams at the price that you want to pay. It's a great deal. 13,000 dealers. 3 million cars sold. TrueCar, that's the way you want to check it out. TrueCar.com. Our guest this evening, and Tim, I was talking about how easy it is using the advertisers for our show. I love to make sure that people get to take advantage of the products that we feel secure in using. And I was laughing with Tim when I was talking about the MeUndies. I said, everybody, whenever I throw up a question and answer online, people say, boxers or briefs. And I wear the boxer briefs from MeUndies. So I thought, well, you know what? As long as we're doing this, let's reach out to them. Tell them I'm wearing the stuff. Let's see if they'll be an advertiser. And they are now on part of our show.
Right.
See the synchronicity? Right. People are always asking, why not answer and use it as sponsorship on the show?
Hey, I have a synchronicity involving underwear.
That's too weird. All right, I got to hear this. Synchronicity about underwear. What have you got for me?
Okay, well, over the years, I have edited about 30 different newsstand magazines.
Okay.
Most of which did not last more than a couple of issues. This would be back in the early 70s to mid-1980s. It was the end of the pulp magazine era. Our magazines were all printed on newsprint. Maybe they had a couple of color photographs in there. There was a lot of stuff about rock bands, like we did a Peter Frampton special, a couple of Kiss specials. I did a magazine that I always enjoyed doing it called Front Page Disasters, because I enjoyed being a journalist, But all these things had a pretty low budget. I mean, we would try to get the photographs pretty much for free. For Front Page Disasters, we got them from the Red Cross. It turns out that they had a huge library, archival library in Washington, D.C. of something like 10,000 photographs of disasters.
Okay.
So, we could manage to put together a magazine on pretty much of a low budget. Well, one of the magazines that I did for a couple of years was an adult sophisticate. That's what they called men's magazines in the publishing field, so as to not to frighten the 7-Eleven dealer,
Right. Okay, I got you.
Right. Okay. So one of the magazines that I did was called Adult Cinema Review, and basically what it was is I would get all these stock photographs from the different X-rated film producers. It was free publicity for them. I would do a couple of interviews, and I even did a center spread, photographed an up-and-coming porn starlet. Okay, so we decided that we were going to have a contest in the magazine. And the contest was we were going to give away a pair of porn star panties that had been owned by a porn star.
Get out of here.
Yes, indeed. And we had quite a number. I think there were 200 people that sent in their request to win. But since we had no budget, we had to pick somebody from the New York metropolitan area because we promised them, like they could come up to the office and we'd take photographs with the porn star who happened to be Marlene Willoughby, who was rather well known in the 1980s as a porn actress. And so the winner of the contest was a cab driver. I don't remember his name offhand, but he was very pleased that he had won her scanty panties. And so we took a few photographs to publish in the magazine, and I shook the guy's hand, and I figured I would never see him again. I mean, why would I run into him? Well, about 3 years later, I'm walking up in Times Square area around, 45th or 46th Street, and it's rather late at night, and I hear the honking of a horn. Honk, honk, honk. And a cab pulls over to the side of the sidewalk, where I'm walking along, and it turns out that it's the winner of the scanty panties that had been owned by the porn star. And lo and behold, what does he have hanging from his rear view mirror but his prized possession?
What are the odds of that, right? Out of all of the gin joints in all of the world, you happen to fall into his, right?
Well, I had another experience, and this involves.
And we're for listeners just checking it out too. We're talking strange synchronicities. We're talking about alternate realities, possibilities, and escaping the matrix.
Madness, total madness,
right?
Total madness. Don't think you're going to really learn anything by this. People think that they're going to learn. They can learn something from their synchronicities that'll take them to a higher level or something. No, that's nonsense. This is all a trick of the mind. Somebody is controlling this, and sometimes they are serious, and sometimes they are not. Okay. Let's go back to the late 1970s, early 1980s. New York had any number of after-hours bars. I mean, if you knew the right people, you could drink till noon the next day.
Right.
Now, I'm not going to tell you that I drank till noon the next day, but I'm not going to say that I didn't either. Okay. But the thing was, you had to be on the lookout because from time to time, the bars would be raided by the police at 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning because all bars in New York City are supposed to close at 4. But that doesn't mean that they do. Now, I guess this would go back to the days of the so-called speakeasy, where you knock on the door and the panel slides open and you tell them Joe sent you. But most of these places had a regular, like a group of clienteles that went up there every frequently. I wouldn't say every night. I went out maybe 3 nights a week, and they were across a cross section of the population. Gay, transgender, every type of individual that you could think of. Okay, so there's one night we're in a after-hours bar, which happened to actually be right above the loading dock of the New York Post. Now, how in God's name the owners of this place figured that they were going to get away with that, I have no idea. But there was about maybe, I would say 40 or 50 people in the bar drinking beer, having watered down shots and so forth. And the police come in. Usually there's a sergeant who's all dressed up in his starched whites with all of his medals and stuff that kind of leads the raid. Well, now, on this particular night, they line us up against the wall. But they're not really patting down anyone. They're looking for people with drugs and guns. Well, I don't think I certainly didn't have a gun, never owned one. And, I wasn't smoking pot in those days anyway, so there was nothing there. Anyway, I'm standing up against the wall, and there's this rather cute blonde next to me. And we get into a conversation. What else are we going to do while they go around and pat down everybody? And the conversation turns around to, well, what do you do for a living? What's your name? What do you do for a living? So I tell the rather attractive young lady that I'm a publisher. Well, what do I publish? Well, I don't want to throw UFOs and ghosts at her because that would frighten some people. And also a lot of people would think you're just, a little bit out of it and they might move away from you, and your chances of going out with this. Scoring. That's the word. Come on, we're guys here. Okay. So anyway, the young lady, fairly attractive, says to me, she says, "Oh, I enjoy reading a lot," and I did. I told her, I said, "Well, we publish a lot of New Age books and books on Nostradamus and UFOs and all." She said, "Oh, that's my favorite subject." So I asked her, I said, "Oh, who are your favorite authors?" And I thought she's going to say maybe something like Gene Dixon or Edgar Casey, or I can't even think who was Ruth Montgomery or whoever was a popular writer around that time. She says to me, Brad and Sherry Steiger. And I says to her, well, what a coincidence. Her name was Elizabeth. I said, what a coincidence. I'm having dinner with them tomorrow night. Would you like to join us? And so that was my first date with the young lady. We went out to dinner with Brad and Sherry Steiger. Now, what in God's name is the chances? I mean, they are popular writers, but what are the chances of standing next to somebody while the bar is being raided by the police and you're having a conversation and her favorite authors are the people that you're having dinner with the next night? Ooh, do. I mean,
what do you make of this then? Tim, if there's no major grand scheme over this and people are looking for meaning and synchronicities, is there something to this, or is it just that we're hyper aware of it? And
no, come on. This is more than that. I mean, again, it's not looking at the clock and seeing it's 11:11, or you're going to run into somebody that you were thinking of the next day. This is something more in depth. I mean, the book goes into about, like I say, 60 or 70 of my experiences, and some of them are a little bit more complicated than others, and some of them actually even tie in with Philip K. Dick, even though we didn't know each other. Well, like I say, there could be several explanations for this. It could be that that there's somebody controlling all of this, but I can't imagine that there's somebody actually standing at some control system or somebody, in some other realm in reality who's deciding that we're going to play another trick on Tim Beckley, or we're going to give him something to talk about on Beyond the Darkness. Now, up until I started accumulating all of these synchronicities, I was mainly, invited on these shows to talk about UFOs. I can't say that I'm bored with the UFOs, but I'd rather talk about my synchronicities here. And also, too, I like to hear from other people who have them. And there are some pretty far-fetched and incredible synchronicities out there, and there's nobody really to report them to. I mean, it's like, okay, most synchronicities kind of impact the people that they happen to. But in some cases, it goes well beyond that. In fact, one of our writers or contributors to the book is a fellow by the name of Sean Castile. And he did a whole chapter on, do you know who Ray Fowler is?
Off the top of my head, the name does not ring a bell.
Ray Fowler was responsible for writing the original 2 or 3 books on Betty Andreas and Luca.
Oh, right. Okay. Sure.
Okay,
We've spoken to her. Right.
Yeah. Okay. And he's a very well established, I think his background is in astronomy. He worked with Dr. J. Allen Hynek. He's considered a reputable researcher, kind of respected by almost everyone in the field. Well, he's even put out a book where he details his own synchronicities. And we've got Nick Redford, who's had synchronicities. We got.
Well, let me ask you this,
yes.
Tim. Then, if we look at the possibilities of synchronicities, and that there is something grander at scale here than just a bunch of happy circumstances that bump into one another, could it be? I mean, we've talked on our show for years about the power of intent. And, some people have called it the secret. Other people are calling it the power of prayer. Some call it the power of intent. But is it, if time is not linear and things have all happened at once in different levels of our life, couldn't we be sending and transmitting signals back which are triggering kind of conscious decisions? I mean, I'll throw out a strange, out a strange story. You tell me if this is synchronicity, because to me it falls into that vein. I love comedians. I love watching comedy specials, especially if I'm in a bit of a funk. I'll put on some comedy specials. One of my favorites is Jay Moore. and they had a special on Netflix, and I popped it up about 2-3 weeks ago and started watching it. And was reminded just how funny this guy is. I loved him when he was on the show The Ghost Whisperer. I loved the movie The Suicide Kings, Man of the House, all these different programs and projects that he's been a part of, right? And I'm watching this special, and I'm thinking to myself, now this guy, not only does he make me laugh, but this is the kind of guy you could just be best friends with. You could connect with, and you know, I needed Jay Moore in my life. And I remember thinking that to myself jokingly, right? And as fate would have it, about a week later, I get a phone call from some of the programmers at Podcast One, and they said, "Hey, how would you like to be a guest on Jay Moore's podcast while you're in California?" And I said, "Sure." And they're like, "He wants you to come to his apartment, and you can talk about this." Now, you know, promotion is promotion, and I understand that they're just reaching out to some of the other podcasters to see if they can cross-promote on each other's programs. So, you know, okay, I'm not thinking too much of that. It's just kind of a happy circumstance that, you know, here I was watching him, and then a week later, I'm invited to be on his show. And then I get an email from this guy. And here I've been such an admirer of his. He tells me, "I love your show. I listen all the time. I've got it in queue constantly. I can't wait to talk to you." And I come out to his apartment and recorded with him this past weekend. We hit it off in a way that is unprecedented for me. I'm a you know, as people think I'm a radio show host, I'm not shy. I'm a painfully shy human, when it comes on one-on-one. And here I am sitting with somebody I admire and really enjoy, and we hit it off in a way and had a conversation like none other. He brought some knowledge and peace into my life that I've been seeking for 40 years. And we connected and ended this with a hug, and he said, "You know, we're brothers now. And, you know, our lives are intertwined. We will be keeping in touch." And it was like, holy hell, what just happened here? 3 weeks ago, I'm thinking I could be best friends with this guy. This is the kind of guy I need in my life. And all of a sudden, Jay Moore's hugging me saying, "Here's my phone number. We're keeping in touch. We're brothers." This is an astounding moment for me. Is that fate? Is that, you know, just a twist of reality, or is this intent come to fruition? Because, you know, my life had already kind of played out, and I'm just picking up these echoes and reverberations through the matrix.
Well, you know, this...
or do I just need another hit off the bong and shut up and stop thinking so much?
Well, you know, Carl Jung, of course, discussed synchronicities to some extent. He listed them as being, I think, in several degrees. You know, some being a little bit more serious than others. What you've just described to us, I would put at the top of the A list as far as synchronicities go, because you are getting something out of it. I mean, it's more than just a hit or miss, a coincidence. It's something that, who can, I mean, how can you say, some people call this God. You know, I'm not a very religious person. I don't even know how spiritual, I might be. I kind of consider myself to be a neo-pagan, whatever that even really means. But some of these things, I mean, people see in a very, you know, spiritual sense, and some of them are more beneficial than others. I mean, some are to be laughed at, some are to be taken seriously, and some of them will have more impact on you than others will. I mean, but it does lead one to believe that obviously there is some controlling factor out there, that we're not in this ball game just by ourselves, but who is throwing the pitches and who is catching and who's on the team.
But Tim? Couldn't it be, though, that maybe we're not giving ourselves enough credit and that we are the one pitching the ball? It's the fact of recognizing signs that we're giving to ourselves all the time. And these synchronicities we think are some woo-woo factor are really nothing more than their transmissions from within us. You know, I've talked about the possibility of time travel and the idea that we've all done something that we regret. We've all had that moment where we should have taken the left instead of the right, and we spend years reflecting on that. And then we recall back to that moment when we heard that voice louder than it had ever been before going, go right, don't do this, go right, and you go left anyway. I often wonder, is that a reflection back? Are we trying to alter our timelines? because we're connected to ourselves. That feedback loop has to be available to us.
Yes, maybe so, but some of these things are just beyond that. Okay, here's an experience that I had. It was in the mid-1970s. I was invited to give a talk to a UFO group in San Francisco. Mm-hmm. I had never been to San Francisco before. I had met the promoters a few times, because they had lived in Cleveland, and one guy got married and he moved out to San Francisco. Okay, so they had me speaking. I forget, it was either on a Friday or a Saturday night, and we had a fairly decent a crowd. I don't know, 300-400 people, and I told my usual UFO stories. Okay, so Sunday, my plane back to Newark was delayed, and also too, it was a late flight. I think it was like 5 o'clock. In the evening, which is kind of late for a plane. Usually they, if you're flying back east, the planes are a little earlier in the day. So we had time to kill. So we all agreed that maybe since it was Sunday, we should have brunch together. It was the organizer, his wife, and maybe 3 or 4 other members of the group. We picked a place at random. Remember, I had never been in San Francisco before. We picked a place at random. We went in, ordered a Bloody Mary, looked at the menu, and just as a matter of chit-chatting with the other people with me, I said, too bad I hadn't thought about this beforehand, because there are several people that I should have called on the telephone who moved from New York to San Francisco, who were like friends of mine and taught at the New York School of Occult Arts and Sciences. And the one person I had in mind was an individual by the name of Alan Vaughn. He had lectured for us. He had put together a series of workshops. He was highly respected by people like Dr. Stanley Krippner. He did some work at Maimonides' Dream Lab. He moved from New York to San Francisco to take a job as editor of a very prestigious magazine at the time called Psychic. This was still during the publishing boom, and there were maybe 3 or 4 or 5 nationally distributed magazines on the paranormal. And Psychic magazine was aimed more at the serious parapsychological crowd. It was in-depth interviews with like Peter Herkos and Gene Dixon and the medium Arthur Ford, who plays actually quite a big role in the Synchronicities of Philip K. Dick. Anyway, so I said, I would have liked to have seen Alan Vaughn while I was here. Well, 2 minutes later, the door to the bar we were in, that none of us remember had been there before, swings open, and this gentleman comes in walking his dog. And I look at him, and I said to myself and to the other members of the group, that's very strange, because that looks like Alan Vaughn. And so I beckon the man to come over, and he says to me, "Hi, Tim, what are you doing here?" And I said, "No, the question is, what are you doing here?" I said, "Have you we had a chuckle about it. And I said, "Well, have you been in this bar before?" He said, "No, I was just walking my dog, and I figure I would come in and have a little bite to eat and maybe have a beer." And so he sat down and we chatted about it and had a good laugh. And I said, "By the way, Alan, what are you working on these days outside of being editor of Psychic magazine?" He said, "Well, I'm doing a book on synchronicities and coincidence, and I guess I have to put this in there." So if you can find that dusty little paperback that sold for 50 cents in those days, I think it's case number 27 or 37 in the book. Now, San Francisco is made up of almost 1 million people. What in God's name are the chances of you running into somebody that you had just been talking about, that you hadn't seen in at least 3 years, walking through the door of a restaurant and bar that nobody in the group had ever been in before? I mean, there's got to be somebody pulling the strings on all of this. I mean, or at least on some of it, I mean, that's just beyond, beyond the pale. It just doesn't happen.
To what end, though? I mean, to what end
well, that's
to do those kind of things?
Okay. Well, that's a good question. And I don't know as if I have an explanation for that. I mean, we have our theories. Like I say, I think that this, if we are living in a computer simulation, somebody programmed this computer thousands of years ago, maybe at the Big Bang. Maybe that's what the Big Bang was the creation of this computer or this matrix that we found ourselves living in. Maybe once in a while, some of the engineers or computer experts come back to look at the gears and the widgets and all, and update the computer and see if it's still running. But maybe they have no desire to really do anything themselves. It's just by random. I mean, if we are really inside this computer simulation, it's all, we could say to a certain extent, it's all kind of a big joke. I mean, because nothing is what we conceive it to be.
Right, but isn't this something that's been with us, I mean, since childhood? Who didn't have that thought that when, you've got this, I don't know if you want to call it ego or what, but that when we're not in the room, nobody else seems to continue to exist, almost like robots shutting down until we enter that realm and they fire back up. I believe that's been the thought of most of us at some point in our life growing up. Mm-hmm. Isn't this the same thing? I mean, it seems, I get the concept, and I know there are people that swear by the fact that we are in a matrix and that it's a holographic universe. What we're experiencing is not real. But then, here's the question, kind of like Philip K. Dick asked, right? Do androids dream of electronic sheep or something, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Here's the whole deal. If that's the case, then whose dream are we in? Is this my reality? Is this your reality? Is it Philip K. Dick's reality? Whose reality are we living in this made-up universe, this computer download universe? And if it exists, how are we self-aware and self-evident of this?
Well, here's another experience. I was in a couple of times every year. I try to leave Manhattan and go and visit friends in the Southwest in the Tucson area. I have quite a number, but that's kind of my second home. We travel to Sedona and have a good time and get a little bit of fresh air, because where I am here on my block, they're putting up 4 skyscrapers and it's so noisy, your head just rattles. So I like to get out of town. Okay, well, there's an individual who runs a little UFO group in the Tucson area. He's a fellow by the name of Alan Benz. He was involved with a group that's now defunct for, I guess, 20 or 25 years, known as the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization, APRO for short. Well, now, Alan Benz was the librarian for this group. And the head of the organization was a husband and wife team by the name of Jim and Cora Lorenzen. And while groups like NICAP and some of the other UFO organizations were mainly interested in sightings made by police officers and pilots and rather kind of mundane lights in the sky, APRO chose to investigate reports of humanoid creatures and close encounters. They took the subject very, very seriously. So Alan Benz was the librarian. I mean, they had enough membership and people paid dues, and they put out a very good newsletter that they could hire somebody for that position. One day, Alan gets a call from Jim Lorenzen saying that they've been contacted by Paramount Studios and they want to go through the APRO files because they're working on a movie project, and they want to make sure that they have cases that are sound realistic and so forth and so on. Well, it turned out it was Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Okay. So, Alan had many telephone conversations with the people at Paramount. I believe the movie was originally slated to be made by Paramount, and they turned it over to Universal, or maybe it was the other way around. So I spent the better part of an afternoon doing an interview with Alan Benz in his home there in Tucson. And then I joined my friend Charla, and we got into her vehicle, and her and I, we drove down to Sedona, which is about a 3.5-hour drive from Tucson. We like to go there. There's a lot of UFO activity. We have a number of friends who live there. And it's just a great place to visit if you want to look at jewelry or art, or have a little bit of a space to yourself, or do a little bit of meditation. People go to Sedona for a mystical experience.
Right.
Okay, so we stop in a place. It's called the Coffee Pot. This is where it's a restaurant that serves 103 different types of omelets, and everybody kind of pops in there. That's kind of the meeting place. So we're sitting in there, and we had our brunch and my Bloody Mary, and then we venture out to the parking lot, and in the space next to where our vehicle was parked was another automobile. And what did the license plate say but APRO, A-P-R-O, which is the organization that Alan Benz had worked for 25 years ago. The organization doesn't exist anymore, and even if there were still a few stray members wandering around, why would they park their automobile in the parking spot right next to us? Now, I mean, you just can't explain that. I mean, there is no rhyme or reason to it. Is there a big meaning to it? Yeah, the meaning is that I should get on the air on your show and some other programs and talk about this. Now, what is the ultimate purpose? I don't know. Maybe we're still to find out. Because it seems to me that members of the scientific community are beginning to realize that perhaps we are living in some sort of computer simulation in that there are different realities, and one reality brushes up against the other.
Right, which is something I've thought could be going on for quite a while, especially when people are experiencing ghosts or Bigfoot or alien interactions. Is it just different realities?
Well, you ask Paul and Ben tomorrow night.
Actually, yeah, they're on Thursday with us.
Okay.
But this is fascinating stuff. Yeah, it astounds me when you look at the possibilities of what's going on. Or actually, they're on Friday with us. I apologize. They're on Friday. Okay, escaping it. Is there an escape from the Matrix? Is there a way to cut ourselves from this and reawaken?
Well, I thought about that. Suppose it's far worse outside of the Matrix than inside of it.
Right.
Suppose we let ourselves out into hell. We'd have to consider that. I don't know. I mean, and when okay, some people would say that Philip K. Dick was stark raving mad. He was known to use quite a bit of drugs. I mean, there are people who consider people that have these experiences to be on the fringe. I mean, I don't do drugs. I don't think that I'm particularly on the fringe. I'm interested in the fringe, but I don't think that I'm on it. So people are. I think people it's like it was 15 years ago, where people would hardly discuss their UFO or paranormal experiences. And now things have gotten have lightened up. Wouldn't you say that?
Right. It's definitely opened up. It seems to be water cooler talk, whereas 10 years ago, it's still kind of hush-hush. Yeah,
iffy. And I think the same is starting to happen now with this synchronicity stuff. Of course, the movies, I think it was there 3 movies, The Matrix, fascinates people, and there are more movies that are in the coming out that are based on the work of Philip K. Dick. So there are people that are beginning to see the light. I mean, there's something weird going on here, and people are interested in sharing their own experiences and synchronicities. I know my own show, Exploring the Bizarre, we've had a number of people who've even made films on synchronicity and have had a lot of experiences on their own. In fact, just a couple of weeks ago here in New York, there was the Philip K. Dick Film Festival, and Jacques Vallée and Dr. Targ, Dr. Putoff was there, and there were about 60 different films that were shown. So little science fiction shorts and things along that line, and it was very, very well attended. Well, I'm not sure that you could have gotten a crowd like this, even 5 or 6 years ago, because most people, most science fiction people, are a little bit stuffy and are not open to new ideas. I would say that the group that showed up for this festival were more prone to be interested perhaps in the paranormal aspects of this than they were just in the science fiction part of the show.
There's so many different aspects to this too, and if you don't mind, again, interested in how you weigh in on something like this. I had one of the most amazing moments in my life happen on also the beginning of one of the darkest moments. I'm a huge Bruce Springsteen fan, as people have known through the years, as I talk about it on the show, and his interactions in my life of. And even as I'm starting to tell this to you, I'm starting to see a strange synchronicity here. But, his music, I believe, saved my life, whether it was, interesting that I kept hearing the song over and over and over the night I tried to commit suicide. And this song kept ringing in my ears and opened my mind to the fact that I was not alone, which I credit to the fact that I'm still here among the living, 32 years later. Because of that moment. And then Bruce Springsteen was doing a tour this last year with his book and was signing, and I flew out to California to meet with him and get a signed copy of his book. And as I got very close to meeting him within about 20 minutes, and this was one of the high points of my life, to get the chance to meet this man and this artist that's really shaped a lot of my life and has helped me out of dark places. This is the guy that's always kind of been my reflecting pool when I'm in a bad place. As I'm just about to meet him, my phone rings, and it's my father. And he says, "I have some bad news. I don't think Mom's going to make it." And it was, again, one of the darkest moments of my life. And I feel like, had I not been there ready to meet my kind of musical hero, I don't know how I would have dealt with that kind of information. And I got a chance to meet Bruce, and I knew, and I said, I'll come home. And he said, "No, Mom would love for you to meet Bruce Springsteen. This is, do this." And I stayed in line, and I had that amazing moment and went. But I often thought, what a strange coincidence, what a strange synchronicity that at the moment I was going to hit another dark period of my life, Bruce Springsteen is there and involved. Do you think this is a synchronicity, or am I shoving a square peg into a round hole?
Yeah, in a case like that, I would think that's even more than it's certainly a spiritual uplifting event in your life. And some of these things are more positive than other things. I mean, and a lot of them do deal with death and dying. Now, I was involved in years past in a lot of rock and roll with a lot of rock and roll music. I managed a few bands. I booked a few groups back in the days of glitter rock, when David Bowie and Mark Bolan were kind of just getting started. Sure. In fact, I was known as Mr. Glitter. Well, one of my friends was Arthur Kane, who was the bass player from the New York Dolls. Well, now, Arthur had a lively interest in UFOs, and he and his wife, Barbara, would come to the various UFO conferences that I put on when I did them in San Diego and in Phoenix. And we were somewhat close friends. Now, the band had broken up, 25, 30 years before I last saw Arthur, and he was very depressed as well, because he always considered himself a musician, but he could never get anything rolling after that one long stint with the New York Dolls. So they were the most popular of the New York City glam bands. Okay, so finally, after all these years, he gets in touch with me, and he says that there's a fellow by the name of Morrissey, I believe his name is, who is a musician from England. Apparently a very influential musician. I'm not too familiar with him, but he wanted to get the New York Dolls back together, and he organized them, and they were going out on a tour. And Arthur Kane got in touch with me, and he said, "Well, we're going to be playing Randall's Island, and I'm going to leave a backstage pass for you." Okay, so the date of the show was coming up, but I hadn't heard from him, and I needed to know which gate to go to and what day to show up, what time they were going on, and so forth and so on. I got a call from my friend Blue Ocean, who's worked as a drummer for Pink Floyd and some other bands, and he called me like at 2:00 in the morning, and he said he had just heard that Arthur Kane had passed away. He had been diagnosed with, I don't know, leukemia or something, and died within a couple of hours of being diagnosed. Well, he passed away on my birthday, which is July 13th, so I never got to see Arthur or the band reform. So, I don't know. Like I say, some of these things, are a little, have a little bit more impact on you than other things, than other synchronicities do. It's a luck of the draw, I guess, a shuffling of the cards.
Are you collecting people's stories? Is that something that you want to continue to hear?
I actually have enough. Yes, for, I realized after I did this book, and I spent a lot of hours on this. I had taken notes. I lost the notes a couple of times, right? The computer hard drive gave out, and I had to reconstruct them from mental notes and stuff like that. But I was going to include everything that I could recall, and some of them were rather lengthy and complex. We don't have time to go into them, or we'd be here for another 3 hours. But I realized at the end of this, when I just gave up because I was exhausted, and the final note was made in the book on page 450 at about 8:30 in the morning. When the book went off to the printer, I realized by looking over my notes that there were another 5 or 6 incidents that I had not included. Now, people have said, "Oh, you ought to write, like your official life story." I'm not sure that there are enough people out there who care. I mean, people always say they're going to go out and buy your book, and then they may or they may not, So I think if I ever do write that life story, I'll include a lot of the incidents that were in this book already, and then add a lot of very interesting and spicy details to it, some of which may be synchronicities, some of which are not. But there are enough people that contributed to this book to show that other people in the paranormal have had these synchronicities and coincidences more so than, I would say, most people. But then again, a lot of people may just not be relating these things. But yes, if people have these experiences, they are certainly more than welcome to share them with me. And if they give me permission to use them in a forthcoming book or article or something like that, I would be more than delighted to do so. And I think it's just research. We've got to do some more research on this and accumulate more data.
Well, Tim, it's always great catching up with you, and I hope we can do that again soon. Thank you so much for spending some time.
Well, you're welcome. This has been a delightful evening of synchronicities and coincidences and things beyond the pale. And the book is The Matrix Control System of Philip K. Dick. And I thank you, Dave.
Thank you very much. Jim Steinmeier joins us tomorrow. We're going to talk about the acclaimed and unforgettable true story of the offbeat intellect and pioneering paranormal investigator Charles Fort. He is the godfather of paranormal investigating. You're going to want to hear this story tomorrow when we return to the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Beyond the Darkness.